have with me today Donnie Smith, the immediate past CEO of Tyson Foods. Donnie, can you tell us a little bit about you and your background?
Sure. Well, I started with the company back in 1980, so I've had a 36-year career in the food business. It's been a great experience because I really had the opportunity to have several different careers, but all within the same company. So I started off in poultry production. From there, moved into commodity purchasing, so buying the grains and working with the railroads and that sort of thing. And from there, had the opportunity to get involved in supply chain management. So I learned a lot about logistics and how important logistics is to a business. From there, the career sort of moved around a little bit. I had some computer systems and technology stuff going on for a few years, and then ended up in our retail business and then in food service before becoming the company's CEO.
Wow. Just for the viewers watching from around the world, could you give us a sense of the size of the company, the portfolio, Tyson Foods?
Yeah, Tyson Foods has sales of around $40 billion US today, maybe a little more. The company has about 125,000 team members around the world, most here in the US. It's primarily a protein-based food company with beef, pork, chicken, and then a segment called prepared foods, which could be anything from lunch meat to a pizza topping to the pizza crust itself. So very diversified food company with a very broad reach. In America today, about 1 out of every 5 pieces of beef, pork, or chicken would be produced by Tyson Foods.
That's awesome.
It's a big company.
It's a big company.
Yeah.
And I hear, ever since you left, you've leaned into Africa. You've been more active. Yeah. Why Africa and why now? And could you tell us a little bit about your projects in Africa?
Yeah, so my heart's been in Africa a long time. I can't remember not having some sort of draw or affinity for the continent. In about 2010, 2011, God kind of stirred my heart and my wife's heart to get involved and try to help. Now, being involved in a food company, naturally hunger is an important part of our family's fabric. And so through a connection from a great group called Bridge to Rwanda, we began a work. We created a foundation called the African Sustainable Agriculture Project, and we began a work in Rwanda to help farmers at the very base of the pyramid create an opportunity for themselves to have a sustainable business. If you talk about sustainable agriculture, you're really talking about commerce. Can you create a business that
Yes.
will sustain itself,
Absolutely.
right? I remember a meeting with the Minister of Agriculture, and my initial idea was to do some demonstration farms and that sort of thing. But what she really needed was a feed mill. And so we built the first commercial feed mill in the nation of Rwanda. It opened in 2014. Today there's about 4 feed mills, and so farmers now have several different choices in being able to find the feed they need to feed their livestock. And it's so important. There's so much potential in the genetics, but if you don't have good feed, it's kind of like fuel for a race car, right? You've got to have quality feed to get the potential out of those genetics. So that's sort of a base ability that a farmer needs to be successful. We've just recently, through a grant with USAID, started a new project around broiler chickens, so the chickens that you actually eat, right? And again, it's focused on the base of the pyramid, where we provide the initial capital that they need to build the coop, or we actually build the coop for them and provide them all the equipment they need on what is essentially a 3-year no-interest loan.
Okay.
Right? And then they will get a microloan for the reoccurring costs, the feed, the chicks, that sort of thing. And then at the end of the grow out, then they'll pay off their microloan and then make a capital payment, and then the money that they have left over can go towards things like school supplies, medicine, improving their diet, which is a huge factor in what we're trying to do is to help get more protein into the Rwandan diets. So off to a good start. Great partners with University of Tennessee, where I went to college, and USAID, and of course ASAP Zamora. So those are the philanthropic efforts that we're doing. But also this year, we as a family decided to become commercially involved in Africa as well. Now, with my background in the poultry business, it sort of made sense for me to be in poultry. And with a company called Buchan, which is actually based out of Mauritius, but it's managed out of South Africa, we have a business that basically sells day-old chicks and feed and the supplements that a farmer might need, again, to those growers at the base of the pyramid. So we may be selling 100 chickens and 2 bags of feed, at a time, versus a large integrated, business that we may be more familiar with in the U.S. So have begun the investment. We're beginning to expand our operations in Tanzania, and I'm really, really excited about helping create affordable food solutions in Africa. It's so important.
Yes, absolutely. And as I listen to you, you're doing something in a unique way. I'm finding out that the strategy you're developing is actually a strategy that will work, and is working. Oftentimes, I see people that mean well, but they go in with a different mindset, not listening to what's actually needed on ground. So that's awesome. As you continue to also develop beyond the bottom of the pyramid, as you said, what do you see at the middle of the pyramid? Do you foresee yourself moving in that space?
Yeah, I think the economic growth potential of Africa is huge. I think we're going to need to be patient, though, about how quickly it expands. Now, think about it. Think about the economy in America in the early 1900s, pre-depression, and where we are today. Vastly different, and took 30 or 40, 50 years to develop, right? I think sometimes we take a overly aggressive approach at how quickly the African economies are going to jump to a, let's call it a postmodern level. But if you'll take some patience and just listen and understand where you can plug in, we will be a part of an integrated chicken business that grows and develops across Africa over the next 20 or 30 years. Awesome. I may not see it all, but my kids will, right? but I think that's so important. And fortunately, we have places that we can look, the US, Europe, Brazil, to see how it will develop, right? And then apply that knowledge to what happens in Africa to speed that development along.
Yes, and I think when you say patience, I think that's something I need to learn, because honestly, I actually feel like it's going to take less time than it's being projected. Here's why. 20 years ago, who wanted to go to China? 20 years after, who's not in China? My own personal prediction that it's going to take Africa less time. Here's why. Here's why I think if more Africans in diaspora, I think that's the secret sauce. People like myself. If we take a more active role in the growth of the continent, I think that's the catalyst. Here's why. Over the last almost 5 years, I worked with Walmart, the largest, leading retailer in the world, developing supply chain strategy, technology strategy, merchandising. I now have the expertise that I can offer Africa, and that's what I'm doing now. Awesome. I feel like if more people like myself, I think one of the statistics out there with Nigeria in particular is that every 5 African, one of them is a Nigerian. And everywhere in the world, you're going to find Africans in the top places, in corporate America, corporate Europe, wherever. If those individuals arise and take on a more active role, because now they're equipped with skills, with talent. They can speak the US side, they can speak the African side. That's one of the conversations I'm also having in my own community, is what are you doing for Africa? I think, largely the future of Africa has to rest in the hands of African.
Oh, I believe so, absolutely.
So I know patience is something, but I see my role as a catalyst. Let's speed this thing up. Let's have the conversations. Let's learn from experts like you, with your connection, with your view of the world. Oh my gosh. I feel like the region is blessed for someone like you to feel called to the region. Some of the other leaders, Scott Ford, Dale Dawson, they're all leaning in. Oh my gosh, I'm excited.
And there's good reason. I mean, if you think about from a food perspective, you think about the continent between now and 2050. Population is probably going to double.
Oh yes, absolutely.
So food production is going to have to more than double because you've got many geographies that have 40, 50% of the population that's food insecure. So we got to go pick them up.
Absolutely.
And then we've got to make sure that we don't lose anybody along the way from a food insecurity standpoint as the population doubles. That's a huge opportunity economically and commercially, as well as, I guess, philosophically around, providing and helping to create these sustainable, affordable food solutions that are going to be so critical to Africa's growth.
Absolutely, and honestly, you're one of the very few people that is thinking this way, and I love it. We need more people thinking about Africa from a business context, and that's one of the things I say. You need to develop, what's your Africa strategy? And I also, part of the message I'm taking to corporate America is, if a US business doesn't develop an effective Africa strategy, they're actually positioning themselves to miss out on the economic growth that you just described.
Yeah, and I think it's at least interesting,
Yes,
more than likely important to note. Today there are some structural barriers that make business in Africa, I'm going to say, more difficult than in other parts of the geography. We're very fortunate in the U.S. to have the transportation system that we have, right? And things can move very quickly from one part of the country to another. Not so much in Africa. It's very difficult and very expensive. But you know what? That is a problem that will get fixed in order to create economic growth. It's a hurdle that's just got to be crossed. And folks are working today on the energy grid, right? And there's lots of projects all over the continent to provide more, not just more electricity, but more electricity that's predictable. It's very seldom that I go into a large, populated area, and I'll always go to grocery stores and look around. It's very likely that while I'm in that store, the power's going to go out for a few minutes, right? But those things will get fixed. People are putting effort and attention on those, and those are some of those underlying factors that need to improve in order for that economic growth to really accelerate. Now, it'll grow. But it'll only grow as fast as you can get from point A to point B. When you can get from point A to point B faster, the economic growth will go faster. Now, there's no lack of will, there's no lack of effort, there's no lack of knowledge. I mean, there are some skills that we need that need to be developed and employed in Africa. But there is no lack of effort or work ethic to get things done. It's just we need to help, number one, provide this infrastructure that just moves business along faster, and then help teach those skills that are so important to growing a business. And you know what? If I've got 2 or 3 dependencies in a business, teaching business skills, we'll win at that.
And that's why
because we have willing students.
We need more people like you. How do we get more people like you?
Hope we can too.
So exactly, because we need to have this conversation. I need to learn from you. We need more people to lean in and join us.
Oh, absolutely. it's a fascinating opportunity, not without its challenges, but so worth the effort. And I'm looking forward to joining with other business leaders from, frankly, all over the world to get involved in the conversation and to help try to bridge the gap on some of these gaps that we face that will make economic development in Africa speed along much more quickly.